Good afternoon, and thank you to those who have joined so far. We'll just leave it a couple more minutes to allow some more attendees to join the line. Good afternoon. We'll be starting the presentation in 1 minute. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's session. During this webinar, we will explore the opportunities for using Veeva for dynamic data-driven market access presentations and take a look at a couple in action. A recording of the webinar will be sent to all attendees after the session. We welcome interaction during the presentation. Please use the questions function on the attendee control panel to log questions, which we will endeavour to answer at the end. We would also love to hear from you after the webinar, so please don't hesitate to get in touch with us for more information. I would like to introduce today's presenter, David Niziol, Managing Director of MTech Access. David has more than 20 years' experience in developing digital interactive market access tools for the pharmaceutical and medical device industries, and has rolled out hundreds of health economics apps and toolkits worldwide. In 2015, David established MTech Access, a global market access and digital communication consultancy founded out of the desire to encourage innovation and flexibility. Over to you, David.
Thank you, Lydia. Okay, so just a quick rundown of what we're going to look at. Now, we have a number of different folk on the line, some from kind of market access background, some health economists, and also we have some digital CLM folks. So what I will try not to do is focus on any one element too much. I'll try not to get too technical, and I'll try not to go too much into kind of the market access aspects. So looking down the introduction, we're just going to very quickly remind everybody on the call, when we're talking about budget impact models and market access tools, what do we mean? our experience in particular with regards to these tools is that they're often produced as standalone applications and are not included within Veeva. And so we want to have a look at some of the rationale and the reasons for that. And then we're going to proceed quite quickly to some demonstrations that illustrates what exactly can be achieved within the Veeva environment with some insights on how we've achieved that. As Lydia mentioned, please do ask questions throughout the presentation, and one of us will either call that out or send a message back as a response. So just very briefly, MTech Access, we are a market access consultancy that kind of span or offer a full service offering, right from kind of evidence generation, health economic evaluation, data analytics, systematic literature review, through to value proposition development, budget impact model, health technology assessment, and then into our digital deliverables. And my experience, and most of the employees here at MTech Access have spent their careers within the market access space. And you can imagine being involved with all of these services and ending up our service offering with digital communication. The majority of the tools that we work on are health economic models that have been converted to a digital platform, budget impact models. We've done some NMA evidence explorers. And so I just wanted to make clear that we're not a digital agency. We are very specific in the deliverables that we provide, and our expertise focuses around these dynamic data-driven toolkits and presentations for Veeva. So just to remind ourselves, when we're talking about budget impact models or BIMs, we're talking about a calculator, if you like, that enables key account managers in the field to communicate the clinical and financial impact of a change of therapy. And quite typically, you'll see in these tools, there's a common flow where you will define a particular population to address, define a market share within that population, an uptake rate of a new intervention, and then do a budget impact analysis. So we've spent our lives building these types of tools, and the kind of common elements that are involved in terms of a functionality for Veeva would be they need to be populated with local data. The user needs to be able to create different scenarios. So these tools are used, if you like, to give a what-if analysis and for a particular health economy. So you have to be able to define and tailor these stories to the audience's needs. Of course, it needs to calculate dynamic results. More often than not, one of these tools will end up in generating a business case summary report that will be left with the customer. The ability to save, load, and reset scenarios is essential when revisiting a health economy for a second or third time, but also to create different scenarios that enable you to present different what-if analyses during a call. And then finally, the majority of our tools are not rolled out within one market. They're rolled out to multiple markets around the globe. And so we need to consider that these tools need to be able to contain multiple data sets, function with different currencies, change language, all at a click of a button, if you like. So our experience is that these tools aren't commonly integrated with Veeva. And some of the rationale for that is Veeva was first designed or intended for use with kind of static interactive visual aids. So out of the box, it's very easy to load up a presentation, to have your CLM analytics hooked up to a static presentation. But we see this perception that for these types of health economic apps or models, the functionality required, which we just looked at, is a little bit too sophisticated for the Veeva environment. And because of that, we see these two different sets of materials. Marketing IVAs, which we'll call static content, and models and HE apps, which has dynamic elements within them. They're handled and just distributed in lots of different ways, where marketing IVAs will traditionally be pushed out through Veeva, and the HE apps will be pushed out through a third-party mobile device management system like AirWatch or Mobile Iron. And the problem that we have here is that you will receive none or very little CLM analytics when you produce these tools as standalone apps. And you can see here the type of information you can get from Veeva. You want to be able to see, first of all, that the tools are being used. You want to see how well they're being received in the field, but also, are there any particular claims within the tool that are consistently having objection raised? Do you need to strengthen your evidence? So all of these elements that are very important to see whether your value proposition is working can be lost if you don't include that within the Veeva environment. So how can we, we said that Veeva out of the box doesn't necessarily facilitate saving, opening of data, loading multiple data sets. But we worked with Veeva quite extensively for a period of about 10 months to say, this is something we think is important that needs to be achieved. And we very quickly found that by creating custom objects, we could attach a data structure to our presentations. And in essence, what we did was we separated the design from content. And so if you want to load in a new language within an environment, we can hold all of the different languages within a custom object. You can select that at the beginning of the presentation, and then the structure of the presentation will be populated with that information. You can think of an object or custom object as a database table with fields and rows of data that we can read and write from. And by utilizing these objects, you can create very sophisticated presentations that stand up to any standalone app that you may have encountered in the past. So we're going to look at a couple of examples. You can see a list here where we're going to look at how we can include health economy data sources within our presentations, produce dynamic approved email summary reports, saving and retrieving modeled scenarios, and even the multi-country supports we mentioned earlier. Now I recognize a few of the names on the call, and several of you would have seen our budget impact model demo previously. I would say just hold on. We're going to share that and give some examples of where we've used these objects and achieved certain functionality. And after we do that demonstration, I want to dive into one of our platforms that we've created that lets you build your own insight dashboards for a particular health economy. So we're demonstrating some of our deliverables in order to illustrate what can be achieved within the Veeva environment. So I'll just jump into my iPad simulator. Okay, I've just been told that my connection is ducking in and out, and it's not currently updating the screen. So let me just change my internet connection. Okay, I will continue. So this is a very, very simple demo, and what we did here to demonstrate the capabilities, you can see this is running within the Veeva environment. I've just picked an account and said I want to show them this particular material. This is a conversion of a nice costing template that looks at the prevention of diabetic foot ulcers. I won't go into too much detail on the argument, and we'll skip through the kind of introduction section to get to the more dynamic elements. I'll just pause here for one moment just so that you understand what this model is looking at as is the incremental cost of providing orthotic footwear, the associated reduction in ulcers, and then the avoidance of subsequent amputations. Okay, so you can see here on this first page of the model, we have a drop down that says please select your population. And if I go in there, you can see that we can select any of the CCGs within England. And as I'm selecting them, what this is doing is this is pulling through, first of all, the prevalence, the prevalence of type 1 and type 2 diabetes associated with that population, and the percents that are at risk within that group of developing a foot ulcer. And you can see they've been classified as high, moderate, and low risk. So straight off the bat, we have a object that we can populate with local health economy data that any presentation can have access to. So you can centralize your data and manage your data in one place across multiple presentations. And within any of these tools, although it's populated with default information, you can see that we can go in there and overtype any of those figures to update a particular illustration. Likewise, if we want to change any of the risk groups or how many patients belong in each one of these classifications, you can go in there and change that. So I'm just going to pick a larger population, just for illustrative purposes. And as we move through the model, so we're looking at a population, a total population size of 2.5 million, that's adults. And within that population, although I've edited some of these percentages, we can see that around 3,000 patients are at risk of developing, at moderate risk of developing a foot ulcer. So like any other budget impact model now, we would go through a current and future practice. One scenario where the intervention is not given, and in the future scenario, an increased use of the particular intervention, which then gives a summary line of the impact of that particular scenario. So in this case, we're going to give 1,665 patients orthotic footwear at a cost of £436,000. And you'll see throughout this presentation, you'll see small calculator icons where you can dive down and see the assumptions behind the calculations. And again, this information, depending on whether it's relating to a particular health economy, can be loaded up from a centralized data source. Really, the place that we want to get to is a impact analysis, and I'll just jump there very quickly. So in this case, you can see that although you are spending more on orthotic footwear, we have a reduced spending on amputations and foot ulcers. And this is where you then want to leave your customer with a bespoke illustration. So we've gone through and customized this story. We can now pull up a preview of a report and send that through to approved email. So the difference here with this approved email is most of the approved emails you may have experienced will be static content. This approved email, and you can have a mix of static content and dynamic content, reads from a particular object that we've written to pull in the results of the model. I mentioned earlier that we need to be able to save and load different scenarios. Excuse me, so if I reset this application, you can see now this is returned to its original state. I can go in there and load up a previously saved file, which will load in my bespoke analysis for that particular environment. Likewise, we can save. And then finally, within this environment, I wanted to show you everything that we've looked at. All of the content, all of the text is separate from the actual design. So we took this tool, exported the text, data, currency format to Excel, run it through Google Translator, imported it back in, and you can see now that I've selected the French market, everything has been populated in local language. And you'll also see when we get to some costs, the local currency format has also been brought up. So I'll finish that demonstration and just show you very briefly as we've been progressing through the tool. Veeva has recorded the path of our presentation. And if I actually look a little bit further into this particular contact, you can now see a mix of the engagements with this particular individual. So having all of your materials, including your market access materials in Veeva, allows you to see did the marketing team go and engage with a certain piece of material and then facilitate one of the market access teams coming in? Did that result in a successful conclusion? And so this shows you, this is just from the kind of key account manager point of view. You can go in, see what was shown, did they send an email? You can turn on the 3 dots that allow you to grade whether it was received well or not so well. And then at a management level, all of this information is fed back to salesforce.com, where they can look at various reports in more detail. So that's kind of one example of how we can use custom objects to facilitate extended functionality beyond that of a static interactive visual aid. And just to take it a little bit further, we wanted to show you this particular platform that we've been working on, that we've named Connected Insights. And this goes a little bit further into data management, creation of your own insight dashboards based on the data you own internally, but also focuses on an element of analysis for an environment before you engage. So the first kind of screens you come to are, do you want to open up an existing dashboard that you've made? Or do you want to globally change a particular data source that may be attached to those dashboards? For this particular demo, I'm just going to go in and create a new dashboard. And a couple things to note here. So we are designing a Veeva presentation. This is the design view. This is where you'll be exploring your various data sources. You'll see that the size of the screen is appropriate for an iPad. This workspace can change depending on whether you are providing an online report, trying to download to a PDF or PowerPoint even. And it works in a very simple way. You first of all select your visualizations from the left. So we're going to drop some elements on the screen. And then on the right, you say, okay, what data source do you want to hook up to these elements? For this particular demo, I'm just going to use some obesity data that I downloaded from thank you, NHS England. And once you have your fields within that environment, you can literally just drag and drop onto these widgets the particular fields that you see in the right-hand side. And you can see that as I start now interacting with these widgets, We've connected a data source, CCG data set. All of these elements are linked together. There is functionality to benchmark. What you're seeing in this view is a cluster view, so comparable CCGs. But you may want to have a look at a national view and see how you compare nationally for that particular metrics. Likewise, you could just show the selected CCG. So here, very quickly, we have you can pick a population. So we have a population of Cambridge that is 800,000, 7% prevalence rate, which results in a type 2 diabetes population of around 60,000 patients. And then if you want to add further analysis, we can go in and start looking at kind of ethnicity and demographic breakdown. And again, just by dropping elements on the screen, and then configuring the view. So instead of a cluster view, let's have a look at the selected CCG. I'm just going to pick some other measurements at random now. And one of the nice things here, you can also just brand very quickly with a specific theme. But you can see how, depending on what information you have access to internally, you can start building up a picture for your value proposition. You can include multiple data sources, so HES, QOF, prescription information, and use this designer to, first of all, interrogate a specific environment, find a particular unmet need. And then finally, when you're happy with this, this would be pushed to Zinc for approval, or you can, Veeva PromoMats for approval, or you can download a zip file of this application, which can be uploaded independently, or download a PDF for alternative approval. But essentially, once you're finished with the design, once you've done your layout, you can then push that to your Vault, your Veeva Vault. And I think that's also something worth mentioning. So Veeva, you can extend Veeva's out-of-the-box capabilities in two ways. One of them is kind of on the client side and using custom objects. The other way is that Veeva provide an API function that allows you to integrate other tools within that environment, which is what we've used here to push this tool to the Veeva Vault. So if I now go back to my iPad simulator, you can see now this is a very rough and ready dashboard that we've created. But within this environment, obviously, you can't create any additional elements. This is the kind of key account manager view of what's been produced internally and what's been approved internally, but has all the same functionality, all these elements linked together. And again, there is a drop down at the box for selecting those elements. Again, all integrated in terms of tracking and usage. Let me jump back. So essentially, we wanted to show those two deliverables to give an illustration of what can be achieved within a Veeva presentation in terms of bringing dynamic content and data into your presentations, developing budget impact models for market access teams, and extending the functionality even further by integrating third-party elements within the Veeva environment. So in summary, there is no need to manage marketing and market access tools in separate systems. Having all customer-facing materials delivered through Veeva provides a complete picture of how materials are utilized and received in the field. Veeva is not limited to static content, as we've seen today, and with the use of custom objects, all the functionality of sophisticated standalone applications can be achieved. So I hope that was insightful. I didn't want to focus on any particular element for too long. If there are CRM, CLM, digital folks who want further information on how we've achieved this, feel free to email us here at MTech Access. But thank you for this time. I'm going to hand back to Lydia to close the webinar.
Thank you, David, and thanks to all those who were able to attend today. As David said, we hope that you found the webinar interesting, but if you'd like any more information on anything we've presented today, then do feel free to get in touch with us. I just wanted to check that there weren't any questions from the attendees before we close the session. If there are anything, do feel free to enter that into the questions panel. We'll leave it a couple of minutes and then we will close the session. So thanks again.